Hello and welcome to another virtual program with Maine Historical Society. I'm Kathleen Newman. It's May 17th, 2022, and this is Songs of Ships and Sailors, a special book talk and performance with Castlebay. Castlebay has been musically weaving together the heritage of New England and Celtic lands since 1987. Members Julia Lane and Fred Gosbee have loved, sung, and researched traditional music for most of their lives, treating audiences to a musical journey through time and across the Atlantic. Their concerts feature poignant ballads sung in Lane's ethereal soprano and Gosbee's rich baritone. Although they're known for their arrangements of traditional music, they also compose their own words, many of which have roots in the Celtic tradition. And they've released 27 recordings, including original and traditional songs. Lane grew up in New Hampshire and in Maine, graduated from Phillips Exeter Academy, and studied in Oxford, England. She studied piano, classical and flamenco guitar, voice, and is a self-taught player of the Celtic folk harp. Gosbee grew up in Maine and studied at the University of Maine. Fully conversant with several instruments, he currently sings and plays classic and 12-string guitar, viola, fiddle, and woodwinds, and is a skilled technician and woodworker. You can learn more about them and their work at their website, castlebay.net, which I'll share with you folks in the chat. Julia, Fred, thank you both so much for being here with us this evening.
It is a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us. It's really exciting to be able to share this program in particular because we've been working hard on collecting and transcribing these songs, which we've found in archives and journals and actually some audio recordings as well. And as you mentioned, we have a new book, first in a series, Bygone Ballads of Maine. And this first book is called Songs of Ships and Sailors.
Well, thank
And
you.
so, yes, thank you.
Well, we're so excited to learn more about it and to hear some selections. I had the opportunity to hear you guys warming up a bit before the webinar began, so I know we're in for a real treat. So I'm going to turn it over to you folks now. And I know you got some images from Maine Historical Society's collection you wanted me to share. So whenever you're ready, I'm happy to bring those up on the screen.
Well, I'd love for you to bring up the beautiful scene of Portland Harbor,
All right.
which is actually on the cover of our book. We loved it so much, we wanted to use it on the cover of our book. And you look at it, and it includes all of these wonderful details about Portland Harbor in 1853, all kinds of little vignettes going on in the harbor. So folks can just have a good look at that for a minute. And like a piece of art, a song can tell us a lot about the people who sang it. And these songs that we've transcribed are songs that were passed down through families. This is not sheet music. These are vernacular, audio, ear-trained songs. These are not written down. So there are many versions of the songs. And it's like a folk painting, which portrays a particular event or something. So now you can bring it back to us, if you would, please.
Sure.
Thank you. We're going to start with a song that we found in a collection made by Fanny Hardy Extorm, who was collecting around the 1920s, actually earlier than that. Her father was a fur trader, and she went with him, I should say, out into the forest and into the logging camps, and she collected songs in the logging camps. She lived in Bangor and Brewer area and found songs in families there. And her friend Mary Smythe collected around the Mount Desert, Cranberry Island area. They put out a book called Minstrelsy of Maine, but there were no melodies, which is very frustrating to a musician. And they were focusing on the words. But what we have done in our book is to find out the melodies that would have gone with these lyrics. And this song comes from that book. It's called The Sailor's Kamal. We found the melody in a collection made by Joanna Colcord, who was from Searsport, and she actually did write down the tunes. So this song is called "The Sailor's Kamal," and we found evidence of it going back to 1605, when there were these songs that were recruiting sailors and telling them how great it is to be a sailor. Join the Navy and see the world, basically. 1605.
Well, they, in addition to saying how great the sailors are, they take great pains to say how bad the land dwellers are. There's a section from the song "In Praise of Sailors," which is from the 1630s, I guess, dissing the farmers.
Right.
And
Don't marry a farmer.
And that section, dissing the farmers, is in 6 different songs in the collection, and some of them have nothing to do with that, but they just put it in there anyway.
Just because. So, "The Sailor's Kamal."
Oh, come all, ye pretty fair maids, if you did but know all the dangers and the hardships that sailors undergo, you would have better regard for them than e'er you had before, and hate the lazy landsman who's always on the shore. Oh, they are always with the pretty girls and telling them fine tales concerning all the hard day's work they've done in their cornfields. Is pulling off the weeds and grass, it's all that they do know, while we, like jovial seamen boys, go plow the ocean through. And when the sun it does go down, aside they'll throw the plow, saying our day's work is ended, boys, it's homeward we'll go down. And when the night is dark as pitch, into their bed they'll crawl, while we, like jovial seamen boys, stand many a bitter squall. Now when 8 o'clock it does come round, the wind begins to blow. Our captain, he commands us all there from down below. All there from down below, me boys, prepare a ship to guard. Aloft, aloft, ye lively lads, and down to the gansel yard. Oh, the seas, they run mountains high and toss us up and down. In the midst of all these dangers, boys, we're feared our ship will drown. But don't let that discourage us, boys, we'll see the girls again. For the might of all America will cross the raging Maine. Oh, we'll sail to all parts of the world that's never seen before, and we'll bring back gold and silver, boys, that's when we do return. We'll make this country flourish, boys, like it never did before. And when our money's spent and gone, we'll plow the seas for more.
So that's "The Sailor's Kamal." And I did want to mention that in finding these the songs in archives, and particularly in the audio recordings, they are all a cappella. It's very unusual to find an instrument accompanying these songs, because they were sung in homes and the lumber camps and the forecastles of ships, and people didn't often have instruments. You might occasionally hear a fiddle or a harmonica, very, very occasionally a piano. But these songs, as we are presenting them, are our arrangements of the songs.
The other thing about the songs is very few of them have choruses, and that's because this tradition is a storytelling ballad tradition. These are story songs. So it's
I think that's why it's hard to get a Maine audience to sing along, because the tradition here is to listen to the stories, and there are many wonderful stories with all kinds of historical references. And that brings us to this next song, which is about an historic event. In putting this program together, I was sort of trying to be Portland-centric. So this is a song from the War of 1812 and the famous engagement of the Enterprise and the Boxer, which was seen actually from our home place, Pemaquid. You could see this battle taking place between Monhegan and Portland.
so the battle was on September 5th in 1813. The mid-coast area was very active in the War of 1812. Further east, it was firmly in British control. Further west, even as close as Portland, it was firmly in American control. But where we lived, there was a lot of conflict happening. So this is a song which is found in The Bird of Boston, was composed shortly after the battle. It did not have a tune, of course, so I've set it to the tune Portsmouth, which was popular at the time.
The Enterprise and the Boxer.
Come all you've left, come all you sons of freedom, and listen unto me. I'll tell of an engagement that happened on the sea between the Enterprise and Boxer, two noble ships of fame. The Enterprise, though she was small, soon made the Boxer tame. We sailed from Portland Harbor when a sweet and pleasant gale, the saucy Boxer hovering round, she proudly spread her sail. It being about meridian when we to her drew near, we hoisted Yankee colors and gave to her 3 cheers. The 5th of September, on a grand and glorious day, when the Enterprise and Boxer, they had their bloody fray. The Enterprise soon boxed her, we quickly made them see. We were Yankee heroes, all from America. On board the Boxer, and would grieve your heart full sore to see all those proud Englishmen lying in their gore. And there upon the quarter deck, where officers do tread, their young captain Samuel Blythe was found amongst the dead. And so we gained the victory, my Yankee hearts of steel. But oh, the dreadful price we paid to make our foes to yield. For in the fray was Burroughs hit, he got his mortal blow. Alas, our young commander will see Portland town no more. cemetery those two young heroes lie. God bless Lieutenant Burrows and Captain Blythe likewise. Far from the roaring din of battle, the province of the brave, they slumber for eternity in the silence of their grave. They slumber for eternity in the silence of their grave.
Yeah, Enterprise and Boxer. And what I love about that is that there's some sympathy for the enemy. They really give them some respect, which is quite wonderful to see and hear.
Well, if you get into the whole story, there was a deal where the British captain Blythe had a check on his person, which would have been very scandalous, and the Americans took the check out of his pocket and sent cash to his widow instead, so that there wouldn't be a scandal.
Yeah.
So there was
interesting.
this camaraderie even amongst enemies. They were both captains. So.
And the song, as he said, is in this chapbook called The Bird, which was one of these wonderful little books that had lyrics in it that would be passed around amongst people, and they would sing these songs to tell the story of the battle.
And we really don't know what melody they used, but that one fits.
It fits perfectly. So here's a song that, again, we had to find a melody for it, but we found it in a very interesting place. As Fred mentioned, in this area there was a lot of conflict with the British, and in Round Pond, Pemaquid, Boothbay area there was a lot of smuggling going on, and some altercations between several ships here, and this gentleman named Commodore Tucker, who was retired from the Revolutionary War, and he took out a schooner to take on the British ship, and the song shows up in his biography.
Tucker was an interesting character. We have every written account of the times mentions his colorful language. So
he was a character.
He was a character.
And he was 67 years old when he did this, which was, getting along in years in those days.
So he took 45 prizes in the Revolutionary War. He took 2 in the War of 1812, so
not too bad.
Can't keep a good guy down.
Now, in the folk tradition, it is okay to add verses, and we have a local legend about a fellow named Collimore, who was a part of this expedition. This verse doesn't show up in the biography, but we've added it because Collimore was also a very colorful character, and so we've added him into the song. So this is called The Brave Boys of Bristol. And again, in looking at it, it fit very well with a tune that was popular at the time, and so we've put the two together.
This one does have a chorus.
Yes, sing along. Cheer up, me lively lads, and let it never... Cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid.
On the 21st of April, or so it does appear, the brave boys of Bristol fitted out a privateer, in command of Captain Tucker, a sloop both neat and trim, and we set out to sail the seas all for to take the bream. So cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid. We cruised the seas for several days, and nothing did appear. So at length our bold commander resolved to homeward steer. It was on a Friday morning, and clear was the sky, when as we were returning, a sail we did espy. So cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid. Up spoke our bold commander, and unto us did say, my boys, be all proud-hearted, and do not fail today, for our enemies before us, and after her we'll run, for I'm resolved to take her before the setting sun.
So cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid.
We bore away after her, and after her we run. We lowered down a topsail, and we gave to her a gun. It was broadside to broadside, we showed 'em Yankee play, till our enemy got frightened and tried to run away.
So cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid.
We shot away her halyards, and down her mainsail come. We drove 'em from their quarters, and down below they run. The captain he stepped forward, a waving of his hand. He said, I must surrender this, I can no longer stand.
So cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid.
We went to bind her to our lee, but much to our chagrin, we found we had no grappling hook to seize and pull her in, till Collimore leapt up and swung the anchor o'er his head. Captain, shall I let her fly? The Bremen monster said.
So cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid.
We lowered a boat over, and on board of her did go. We made them all our prisoners, and sent them down below. We hoisted Yankee colours, and hauled the British down. Then when we did examine her, she proved to be the Crown.
So cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid.
Then up spoke our bold commander, we will take our prize on shore, for we're the boys that fear no noise, though cannons loudly roar. And we will quickly rid the coast of all these British boys, for we will fight 'em till we die, and never mind their noise.
So cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid.
So we have fought the privateer till she was overcome. God bless Captain Tucker on this day for what he's done. Likewise the officers and all the jolly crew. God grant that they may prosper in everything they do.
So cheer up, me lively lads, and never be it said, the brave boys of Bristol were ever yet afraid. Boy,
Now
we need a tankard of ale for
Yeah.
that one. That's a great pub song, and you can imagine this crew all singing this song after the after party after they had this adventure.
the actual battle was nowhere near as bombastic as that.
Well,
But never let the truth stand in the way of a good song.
And that's what's really interesting too. Is often the songs will have details and history in them, but sometimes the story gets stretched a little bit. So it's fun to
again,
compare.
This one didn't have a melody, and we fit it to
Right.
a tune of the times.
Exactly. All right, now if you could put up that slide of the broadside. This is called Mournful Tragedy. And so often these songs would get passed around. Someone would write a broadside and print it out and put it on the wall of public buildings, or else sell them as penny sheets. They might sell them for a penny a piece, especially if it was a very local kind of event that it affected the community. So there might be several families involved. This one was written by a gentleman named Withington, and I didn't find any more of his works. It's probably a good thing, but it was great because this did designate a tune. Now there was another fellow named Thomas Shaw who was an ambulance chaser, and if there was a disaster, he would go and write about it and sell his broadsides to the families, to the crew members of the ship that went down, that survived. He actually made a pretty good living doing this, but his stuff is really dreadful, even worse than this one.
and he had a coffin stamp, and would stamp his music with however many deceased people.
Yes, and this one has coffins on it.
And this one has coffins
yes.
on it. The full title is Mournful Tragedy! Exclamation point. Lines on the drowning of 6 young men in the harbor of Portland near Diamond Cove.
Right, and it says to the tune of Auld Lang Syne, So Fred is going to sing very elegantly, not the whole thing, just so you can get a sense of how this might have been presented.
Young men, let me get a key here. Young men who in this city live, or in the pine tree state, we have a solemn warning here, which to you we relate, of 7 young men who took sail, all in the prime of life, by death were called to leave their friends with children and their wife. They went down Portland Harbor for to take a pleasant sail. The 8th day of October, when 6 perished in that gale. There was but one who swam to shore to tell the news to all. He said near Diamond Cove their boat was capsized in a squall. This goes on for 5 more verses.
Well,
I'll spare you.
And I think that she has it up on the screen so they can see. It gets into, you better behave yourself or you'll suffer a terrible end. There's a very moralistic aspect to
Yes.
this. So anyway.
Gabriel's trumpet, Canaan's happy shore. Yes,
Right. So these are songs that were made about actual events that took place right here in Maine, and they do commemorate them. This song is actually, it became popular, but it was written in Scotland. But the incident is Mary's Dream.
Yeah.
It's an interesting incident that gives you a sense of the women left behind and how they would, well.
There is a story in the history of Dresden which exactly relates to this
follows
song.
this story, which is really interesting. The women might be left behind, and then they might dream of their loved one, and be forewarned that there was a disaster. So this is a song that reflects that separation of the wives and husbands. Beautiful song called Mary's Dream. Became popular in the early 1800s here in Maine. Oh yes, I know why we were doing this song. This was sung by a woman named Carrie Grover from Gorham. And Carrie Grover was an amazing resource. She had several hundred songs that came down through her family. And this is one of them. This is Mary's Dream. The moon had climbed the highest hill that rises o'er the river deep, and from her eastern summit shed her silvery light on field and tree. When Mary laid her down to sleep, her thoughts on dreamy far at sea, when soft and low a voice she heard, saying, Mary, weep no more for me. 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 safe, but all our striving was in vain. Even when horror chilled my blood, my thoughts were always on loving thee. The storm is past, and I at rest, so Mary, weep no more for me. 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 Loud crowed the cock, the shadow fled. No more of Jabie could she see, but soft the passing spirit said, Sweet Mary, weep no more for me. 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 Oh, yes, a romantic song. And if you go through any cemetery here on the coast, you'll see Died at Sea, all of these really tragic stories of people that took ship and never came back. That song probably was sung in drawing rooms and parlors as well, perhaps at the Longfellow House. Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, it was one of those, Victorian romances that got passed around. But Carrie Grover was not a wealthy woman. She just loved the song and sang it. So
This
what have
next
we got?
song probably was not sung at the
No,
Longfellow
no, no,
House.
no. This would have been. It's not a terribly morally objectionable song, but in those days, one would probably be judicious about where you sang this. And it is a sort of a portrait of the waterfront, shall we say, down on the docks in Portland, which would have included taverns and ladies of the evening, probably. And this song is really interesting in that it includes a place called the Green Bed. And if you don't know what the Green Bed is, it's not quite as interesting a song, but we did a little research, and it turns out the Green Bed was a room in the inn that was reserved for people of means, and for gentlemen of means, actually, and might include the landlord's daughter. So that explains a lot about this song. So we'll go down to the dockside along 4th Street there, and maybe even further down, and just have a little jaunt in the evening.
This song may or may not have a happy ending, depends on your point of
Depends on who
view.
you are. And it appears in the Maine tradition. It actually was sung in the lumber woods, so which may make you wonder why these songs would end up in the lumber woods. But what happened was the sailors would migrate when they were tired of being at sea. They would go and work in the lumber woods, and the lumbermen might take ship and work on the ocean for a while. They would trade back and forth. So these songs would go back and forth from the shore to the ship. So here's the Green Bed. It's of a young sea captain who had lately come ashore. He went up to an alehouse where he had been before. You were welcome home, young Johnny, you're welcome home from sea. Last night my daughter Polly was dreaming of thee. What luck had you, young Johnny, what luck, oh tell to me.
Oh, I lost my ship and cargo all on the raging sea. All on the wide Atlantic, my ship and cargo crossed. All Polly and set her on my knee. Yes, bring down pretty Polly, and married we will be.
My daughter, she is absent, oh, she has gone away. And if she were at home, John, she would not let you stay.
Now when John, he heard this, oh, he hung down his head. He called for a candle to light him to bed.
The beds, they are all full, John, this fortnight more. And you are not welcome, for you are very poor.
Upon the landlord, I looked upon them all, and then for his reckoning so loudly he did call.
20 shillings of the new John and 30 of the old. Young John,
He then pulled out both hands full of gold.
Then in came pretty Polly, all with a smiling face. She gave him 3 kisses, likewise a fond embrace. You are welcome home, young Johnny, you're welcome home from sea. The green bed is waiting for you, young Johnny.
Well, as for your green bed, I would rather lie in the street. When you thought I had no money, my lodgings I might seek. Now I've money in both pockets, and I'll make the taverns whirl with a bottle of good brandy, and on each knee a girl. So all of you young sailors, a warning, take my knee. Be careful of your money when you return from sea. Be careful of your money and lay it up in store, for if you do not, they will drive you from their door.
The green bed. There's another detail in that song that's interesting. The money being the old and the new. We can date that song to a time when the money had actually been recalibrated, and so you had the old and new money. Well, I see we only have about 5 more minutes, which is very distressing, but we could do maybe 2 more songs.
Yeah.
Actually, I think we should do the Marielle. We'll do I know. This is, you may have noticed that we haven't done any work songs. And one thing we decided in putting together this collection was that shanties, as they're known, which are the work songs that coordinate the labor on board the ship, were pretty improvisational. And they were kind of universal across crews, international crews. So they wouldn't be specifically Maine songs. But this one, it interestingly refers to Sackarap, which was the old name for Westbrook. And where did my song go? Here it is. And it's about the horses that were used to haul the rocks from Westbrook to Portland. So this is a song that would have been used probably for pumping the water out of the ship. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? Now worn out by sore abuse, you're salted down for sailors' use. Old horse, both far and near, you carted stone this many a year. All a rough and dusty track, where you fell down and broke your back. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? Now worn out with sore abuse, you're salted down for sailors' use. In strongest brine you have been sunk, until you're hard and coarse as junk, and we poor sailors standing near must eat you though you look so queer. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? All worn out with sore abuse, you're salted down from sailors' use. We between the mainmast and the pump, I'm salted down in great big chunks to eat such poor and wretched fare. You're food for every hard-worked tar. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? All worn out with sore abuse, you're salted down for sailors' use. The sailors, they do me despise, they turn me o'er and damn my eyes, cut off my meat and pick my bones, and throw the rest to Davy Jones. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? All worn out from sore abuse, you're salted down for sailors' use. So, little culinary delight there.
We have Dick Swain to thank for that setting.
Right. So we're going to finish up with a song that has been made popular recently in the last 30 years, which is recent. And it is about an actual event, although the names have been changed to protect the guilty. And of course, as many of you know, the prohibition was in full sway in Portland. I'm told that you could make rum in Portland, but you could not drink it. So there were folk coming back and forth from Nova Scotia, and this song is actually about a real ship whose name is now the Ernestina. In the song, she's called the Marielle Mckay, and it has a lot of words, but it's a great rowdy song about a record trip to Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. So we'll finish up with this, and then we'd be delighted to hear any of your questions and maybe be able to answer them. The chorus goes, storm along, drive along, punch her through the rips, the rip tides. Don't heed those boarding combers as the solid green she ships. 'Twould fill your heart with terror, and you'd wish you were away at home in bed and not aboard the Marielle Mckay.
Oh, come all you hardy Atticus who winter fish and go, and brave the seas upon the banks and stormy winds and snow. And you who love hard driving, come and listen to my lay.
It's me, Fred.
Oh.
It's me. Sorry. Try again. Too many strings. We should just sing it a cappella, right? All right, here we go.
Oh, come all you hardy Atticus who winter fish and go, and brave the seas upon the banks and stormy winds and snow. And you who love hard driving, come and listen to my lay of the run we made from Portland on the Marielle Mckay. Well, we hung the muslin on her as the wind began to hum. 20 hearty Nova Scotia boys, chock full of Portland rum, made so cordial jib and jumbo on that wild December day, as we passed Cape Elizabeth and slugged the Fun Day
Here's the
Bay.
chorus.
Storm along, drive along, punch her through the rips. Don't heed those boarding combers as the solid green she ships. Don't fill your heart with terror and you wish you were away
at home in bed
and not aboard the Marielle Mckay. We slugged her past Waukegan and the wind began to scream. Our vessel started dancing in a way that was no dream. A howler all the topsail, we heard her east passed away. Oh, she was a hound for running, was the Marielle Mckay. When we slugged her past Matinicus, the skipper hauled the log. 60 knots, Lord Harry, ain't she just the gal to jog? The half-can steersman shouted as he swung her on her way. Just watch me tear the mainsail off the Marielle Mckay. Stow along, drive along, watch her through the rips. Don't heed those boarding combers as the solid green she ships. Don't fill your heart with terror and you wish you were away at home in bed and on board the Marielle Mckay. Well, the rum was passing merrily, the gang was feeling grand. Long necks dancing in our wake from where we'd left the land. The skipper he stepped sober, for he knew how things would lay, and he made us furl the mainsail on the Marielle Mckay. Under foresail, jib, and jumbo, we tore wildly through the night. The surgeon foaming white caps in the moonshine made a sight. And in that wild inferno, boys, we soon had hell to pay, but we didn't give a hoot aboard the Marielle Mckay. Storm along, drive along, watch her through the rips. Don't heed those boarding combers as the solid green she ships. Don't fill your heart with terror and you wish you were away at home in bed and on board the Marielle Mckay. We lashed a helmsman to the bogs as he steered through the gloom. A big sea hove his glory made right over the main boom. It tore the oil pants off his legs and you could hear him say, there's a power of water flying for the Marielle Mckay. Now the skipper didn't care to make his wife a widow yet. He swung her off the Yarmouth Cape with just the foresail set. We passed Port June next morning and shut in at break of day, and soon in sheltered harbor lay the Marielle Mckay. Stow along, drive along, watch her through the rips. Don't heed those boarding combers as the solid green she ships. Don't fill your heart with terror and you wish you were away at home in bed and on board the Marielle Mckay. From Portland, Maine to Yarmouth Cape, 220 miles we ran. In 18 hours, me bully boys, now beat that if you can. The crew said it was seamanship, the skipper he kept dumb. But the force that drove our vessel was the power of Portland rum. Come along, drive along, watch it through the rips. Don't heed those boarding combers as the solid green she ships. Don't fill your heart with terror and you wish you were away at home in bed and not aboard the Marielle
Mckay. Yeah, quite an adventure and a true story. And interestingly, Ernestina is now the flagship of the state of Massachusetts, and she's being refitted in Boothbay even as we speak. So, true story. Names changed to protect the guilty. All right, so I guess we've gone quite a bit long, but hopefully that hasn't been hardship for you. We would like to hear your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Thank you so much, Julia and Fred. That was wonderful. And I know I could listen for another hour, but we'll stop there.
That's okay. Another time. We'll do volume 2.
And yeah, let's. We've got some questions for you folks. I wonder if you could speak a little bit to how you approach research for projects like this. You know, where do you go? Where do you find this information? Where do you begin?
Well, we began with the existing collections.
Fanny Hardy
Ekstrom published British Ballads from Maine in 1929. And we had that book. There were only probably 1,000 ever printed, and we happened to have 2 copies, I think, at one time. But so we were aware of these collections. But then...
Well, I was going to say the Maine Folklife Center has a lot of original manuscripts, and Fanny Ekstrom's papers are in the Fogler Library, yes,
Yeah,
in
University of
Orono.
Maine.
So as we read through her papers, we realize that she was connected with other collectors. So there was a man named Philip Sperry from Harvard who helped her to publish her books, and she worked with Susie Carr Young and Mary Smythe and some of the other people in her realm. And then she connected with a collector from Vermont named Helen Hartness Flanders. Now, Flanders was going all around New England. She collected over 3,000 songs in audio format. She actually recorded people in their homes.
Now, this was before the days of tape, so the format was sometimes wire, sometimes wax,
It's
sometimes
all over the map.
everything.
There's probably 10 different kinds
and
of...
the quality is, you have to hear it to believe it.
Yeah, I was going to play some of the recordings, but we didn't have time. It's kind of excruciating. Those recordings have been digitized by the University of, by Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont. And they do have them online, but the index is very difficult to decipher.
As a public service, Julia has an appendix in the book that gives the time code where you can find each song that's in the book.
So if somebody wants to hear the original of a song that we found, I have tried to provide the place where you can actually find it.
Excellent.
So in a nutshell.
It sounds, and am I right in it, based on what you're saying, it sounds like this is a history and a tradition that was preserved by a lot of women. Is that true?
That is very interesting that you would notice that.
The 5 major collectors in New England, generally, and Maine in particular, were all women.
Yeah.
So there was Fanny Ekstrom, there was Eloise Linscott, who wrote a wonderful book called Folk Songs of Old New England, but she ranged throughout Maine and collected a whole lot of audio recordings. There's Joanna Colcourt, who was born at sea, but she was based in Searsport. There's Mary Smythe.
Margaret Only.
Margaret Only, you know, and the only thing that is probably, well, it may be unfortunate or maybe not, because they were women, a lot of the songs were edited, and so we don't find any really objectionable songs.
Sure.
And in some of the recordings, you can hear the singer editing for them.
There's one song, it goes like 2.5 verses, and then
He suddenly has a coughing fit, and he can't remember the words.
anything, but we could see where the song was going, and it wouldn't have passed muster.
Well, and we know other versions of it, and we were like, oh my goodness. So, you know, I thought that was really interesting.
Sure.
And in fact, Fanny does state that, you know, she was kind of disgusted that they did this because she wanted to document what was being sung.
Well, and Joanna Colcourt, when she recorded she wrote down the shanties that the sailors were singing, they would not let her write down the ones she had heard when she wasn't supposed to be listening.
Right.
Funny.
So if you're looking for the real salty songs, they're not going to be in this book. Because they just weren't in the collection.
Sure. So I know, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention that, you know, of course we're looking for things like, you know, socially objectionable things like racism. And I found very little. There were not in the 600 songs we listened to, the N-word was never used once.
We did find one song where there's a black sailor, but he's the hero.
Yeah,
Wow.
he actually he comes out as the hero in the story. So, and there are several songs about the lass of Mohi, who is an exotic, either Native American or perhaps Polynesian woman. But, you know, he's pining for her in a romantic and respectful way. She's not treated like a prostitute or anything
Or
like
like
that.
objectified, or yeah.
Oh, no, it's just,
Interesting.
you know, he just thinks she's beautiful and loves her. And in fact, he goes back to his girlfriend. He says, no, I have a girlfriend at home. And his girlfriend has ditched him. So he goes back to he goes back to the Lass of Bohemia.
That's one version anyway.
Yeah,
There,
so
there were several different endings.
but it was
Sure.
interesting to not find those things,
Wow,
and
yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why, but they just weren't there.
And in terms of where to find the songs, there's the collections, there's the audio files. Library of Congress has a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff down in Harvard. When Julia was going through Fanny Ekstrom's papers, she found a listing of 100 songs, just the titles. And they were in a genealogy.
We tracked them down. A fellow named Frank Neeland wrote down the 100 songs that his father sang in the family genealogy.
In
Wow.
1914.
1914.
So the songs go well
you
back
never
into
know
that.
where you're
Yeah.
going to find stuff.
That's
Yeah.
great. Now, a lot of people are definitely curious. Can you tell us talk a bit about volume 2 in the series, or do you have any hints on what the rest of the series might cover?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Just in Flanders collection, there are 900 songs from Maine.
Wow.
And that you can, sort of find, like, there'll be 5 versions of, say, the Lass of Mohi or something like that. So you can boil it down. But that's just that collection. And Horace Beck collected a whole lot of songs. And his dissertation is actually in the Portland Library, which was great to find because he collected a lot of wonderful songs in Maine.
We had sort of thought we were not going to do lumbering songs because they've been done.
They've been done.
On the other hand, there are versions of songs that have been done that haven't been done.
Right.
So we might.
Sandy Ives did a wonderful job with the lumbering songs, and he really tracked down some of the actual makers of the songs. There were these fellows who, were lumbermen, but they were known for making songs. But so I think the next volume, this is a long way of saying, we will include some of the lumbering songs. There are lots of wonderful songs about living on the farm. There are an awful lot of murder ballads. And we're going to have to be
And then
judicious with those because they're pretty
And
gory.
the other thing that might make it into the volume are fires and floods.
Disasters, murders and disasters. We could do a whole book of murders and disasters, but who
Yeah.
wants that?
I just guess
So-
nothing says grab your guitar like murder and natural
Oh
disaster.
yeah! Oh my god! And it's interesting listening to some of the people singing these. There's this one woman who absolutely, I mean, I'm sure she reads the National Enquirer. She is all about the gory details, and you can hear her just, it's delicious for her to sing this stuff. I mean, I just can't imagine it.
Wow.
But yeah, so it takes all kinds.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've found quite a, you've got quite a treasure trove to make your way through and to think about, what comes next, and we'll be excited to see what it is and to hear from you again.
Well, I've already found some really beautiful songs, what's striking to us is that the melodies of many of these songs are beautiful. They're intricate, and in some of them, the language is very sophisticated. These are not just Uncle Joe on the porch with his banjo. These
Right.
are they're educated people, but they're in the middle of the woods somewhere. So it's really a fascinating sort of portrait of the population in the 19th century here in Maine.
Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of biographical information from the Flanders collection. She introduces every song, where it is, the fellow's name, and the date, and the title, which may or may not be accurate, but nothing about the singer himself. Sometimes she will say, "Where did you learn that song?" "I learnt it from my father."
It is interesting though, because there's a whole group of people that I think they made an effort not to go into higher class homes, and there's a whole group from Agamenticus in around the York area, and we're doing a presentation for the York Historical Society, and they were saying, you know, the people in Agamenticus were definitely across on the other side of the tracks.
Mm.
And we actually met a fellow who remembered one of these singers. And he told us about, you know, he lived in a tar paper shack, had no electricity. He, you know, just was a very, very close to the ground. But we have have recordings of him singing these really sophisticated
Yeah.
songs. So it's an interesting social kind of portrait
Sure,
of these
sure.
people. Yeah.
Well, this was such a wonderful program, really entertaining, really interesting. Thank you again. The book is called Bygone Ballads of Maine, Volume 1, and
Yep.
the group is Castlebay. And I've shared there's the book. And you can find the book right on your website, castlebay.net.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
So be sure to visit, and you can also learn more about the history. I know I was sharing links while you guys were singing to some of the connections you mentioned to Blythe and Burroughs and the
Oh,
War of
wonderful.
1812 and
That's
Prohibition.
great.
So
Yeah.
if you're curious to learn, to dig into some more of these stories, visit mainmemory.net. And you can find a lot of wonderful history behind a lot of what we heard tonight too.
Now, for those
Oh, were you going to mention that?
for those folks who don't read music or prefer to learn by ear, on the copyright page of the book, it gives a link to a web page which has MIDIs of all the melodies.
Great.
So you can learn the tunes, and just another note about the tunes. Many of the singers would ornament a lot, and we did not document that ornamentation. We boiled the melodies down to basic melodies so that they wouldn't be inscrutable to people, and
Sure.
also people can make them their own.
Right.
And if
right.
if somebody really wanted to sing it like the original,
They can listen to it.
They can listen to the ones we got
That's
from the
wonderful.
audio collection.
Yeah. So
Nice.
thank you so much for having us.
It
We
was
really
it was our
appreciate
pleasure. I hope our paths will cross again soon, and I hope next time maybe we can all gather together in person.
Let's
for
just
music.
hold that
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
Hold that thought.
Well, thank you
Wonderful.
again, and thanks everyone
you.
for joining us. Have a great evening.